Good morning, Ramblers. Welcome to another weekend and indeed another episode of Reese Rambles, my weekly wrap-up podcast type thing, covering all the comings and goings, movings and shakings and happenings and everything else that's been going on in the worlds of retro computing and retro gaming. I hope you're all doing well. And yeah, I messed up last week's release. That's the first thing that I just need to address, I think. Ramble 73, where I talked about a very cool pinball museum that I'd been to in Budapest, as well as the Crazy Taxi remake, the new Michael Jackson Moonwalker arcade core for Mister, and a load of other stuff. So if you missed that, basically I recorded it on the Thursday. I usually record these on the Friday. This is some really boring information to open with. I can see the retention graph going downhill right now, but anyway, I recorded this on the Thursday and then I scheduled it for that night at 2 minutes to midnight like I always do. And then I woke up on the Friday morning and thought, hang on a second, it's not Saturday today, it's Friday. So it went out a day early and I had to take it offline and then reschedule it. And that completely killed off the views on it. So there you go. Anyway, if you've missed that one, that's there in the usual places. So I'm sure you can go and find it. But the other thing that I suppose I need to talk about, just before we get going with the stories this week, is the fact that I'm at home and the absolutely horrific video quality on this week's Ramble. I mean, hopefully the audio's okay. I'm using my old mic, which is basically the same as my new mic. So that should be okay, and that is the most important thing, really, with this being a podcast. But yeah, this is my web. This is what the built-in webcam looks like on my MacBook Air, my M1 MacBook Air. It's a modern Apple product, and it's bloody awful. So if you're an Apple hater, this is your chance to get your digs in now, because they're totally justified in this case. But yeah, anyway, of course, we don't want to bore the people who are listening on the podcast platforms. Oh, the reason I'm actually at home this week is because I broke my car, essentially, and it's been fixed, and I'm waiting for the call to say that it's done. And I don't want to walk the half an hour down the road to the studio today, because I have a package coming, apparently, and the tracking information that I've got basically says that they're not going to leave it. They're insisting that I sign for it, and I'd quite like to get this package today because it's Friday and I don't want to have to wait. You know, it's something I could do with over the weekend for a project that I'm working on. So I'm stuck here until it arrives, but that's perfectly fine. We can improvise, can't we? If nothing else, I'm quite resourceful, I like to say. But anyway, all of that over and done with. Let's get on with the ramble. It's 1,000 degrees today, so I want to get this over and done with. Unlike the studio, I don't have air conditioning in this room at home, and it's probably the hottest room in the house. But there you go. Excuses over and done with. Let's do a story. So last week I talked about the Crazy Taxi reboot, which is coming in the near future from Sega. And I kind of opened that story by talking a little bit about the Dreamcast and how it's one of my favourite consoles of all time. And indeed it is. I mean, it was such an advanced console for its time, wasn't it? It had that built-in modem, it had the 4 controller ports and stuff, it had the little VMU displays on the controllers, and I just loved the Dreamcast. I just thought it was a fantastic console, and one that has gone down, one that's been very fondly remembered by history. And of course, it was Sega's last ever console, last physical console. Of course, they're still around releasing games on other people's consoles. But yeah, what a way to go out! You know, we had the Master System and the Mega Drive or the Genesis, the Saturn, the Dreamcast. I mean, what a run. And then, of course, there's the handhelds as well. And I've probably missed out a few others. But anyway, this isn't a segment on Sega history. This is about remakes on the Dreamcast. Yes, not remakes of Dreamcast games this time around, but remakes that are actually coming to the Dreamcast console itself. So this story comes to me from TimeExtension.com, and the title of this is "A fan-made Dreamcast port of Grand Theft Auto 3 is in the works." I know, right? Because that, of course, came out on the Xbox and the PlayStation 2 back in the day, and of course the PC as well. There was a recent official remake of this, like a remastered version, wasn't there, where they used all sorts of dodgy AI upscaling on the character models and stuff, and I think it was quite widely slated. I don't know if they ever fixed that, did they? Anyway, that's not what this story's about. So when it comes to the most requested fan ports for Sega Dreamcast, Grand Theft Auto 3 for PS2 is often high on the list, and it's easy to understand why. These are Time Extension's words, not mine. Not only is it a landmark title that pushed the game industry forward with its 3D open-world exploration, but it also famously began life on the Dreamcast before development was shifted over to the Sony platform. Of course, that's true. It was originally going to be a Dreamcast game before, obviously, Sega announced that console was being discontinued, and Rockstar said, well, actually, why are we wasting our time making this game for this dead platform? We'll shift it to the PS2 instead. So, yeah, probably quite a wise commercial decision at the time, even though it was, still quite a cult favourite console. But anyway, as spotted by the Sega Guru, a developer called Skimp is currently in the process of developing a fan-made port of the game for Dreamcast and is documenting their progress over on Twitter. The port is being built using Dream SDK 3, so this is a native game for the Dreamcast. It's not running in a PS2 emulator or anything fancy like that. And Callisti OS, and is using PC assets, so using the assets from the PC version of the game rather than the PS2 version of the game. As the Sega Guru details in their video on the port, debugging is being done in Raycast, which of course is an emulator, alongside a software renderer debugger called RefSW. Oh, it's actually Skimp actually wrote Raycast apparently. Raycast, Raycast, however you pronounce that. And another Dreamcast emulator called IDX Dream. As you can see from the image above, well, anyway, let's not talk about that, because the Sega Guru has made a video showing what this looks like. Now, I'm going to manage expectations here and say, look, don't. This is still in the very early stages, so don't expect anything groundbreaking yet. But the game is running. Obviously, the graphics are a little bit broken in places, but the game's running. There's some footage here of somebody driving around on a disembodied set of wheels down a road, because the car model doesn't seem to be fully loaded. It's running at, about 19 FPS, and the streets are mostly there, the buildings are mostly there. We've got, lights, traffic lights and stuff. Still very, very early days, but really cool to see a game like this in such early stages of development, and it's looking quite promising. I mean, obviously, stuff's going to be optimised and whatnot, but I thought this was really cool. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about GTA 3, because I am quite a big fan of the GTA games. I really loved the original when that came out. I had that on the PC back in the day. And then GTA 2, of course, that was absolutely fantastic. And then I actually didn't play GTA 3 and Vice City and that kind of era of GTA when they actually first came out. I have recently revisited them, but somehow, I had an original Xbox as well at the time, but somehow they just passed me by. I think I was busy playing Halo or something else. But so it's really cool to see this up and running on the Dreamcast. And then, of course, I love GTA 4. I think it's incredible, and big fan of 5 as well. Although not all the online rubbish. I think Rockstar should focus more on the single player stuff, personally. But anyway, that's really cool to see this running. This is a project that I am following quite closely now to see how this develops. But I will link to the Sega Guru's video on this. It's not just gameplay footage. He does explain the story behind it and everything kind of around the video. And it's only 4 minutes of your time. And he seems like a lovely chap and seems to know what he's talking about. So I'll definitely direct you towards that. But there's some other Dreamcast porting news this week that I also wanted to talk about. And this concerns one of my favourite games. So, yeah, DOOM64, which I've talked about quite a bit on these rambles, because, again, it was a game that passed me by back in the day. I didn't have an N64. I did recently acquire one and then mod it and then sell it on eBay. So that was quite short-lived. But, yeah, DOOM64 just completely passed me by back in the day. And then, of course, Night Dive did that awesome remaster, which came out last year, I think. And I played through that and loved it. It's actually a really great game. It's very different to the other Doom games, and I think at the time it kind of wasn't received all that well because Doom was a bit long in the tooth, and it wasn't even the proper version of Doom anyway. But actually, it's a decent game, and well worth checking out if you're into that kind of era of first-person shooters and stuff. And it's out on the Dreamcast. And this one isn't in development. This one is actually finished. You can actually go and download it and play it now. You have to build it yourself, and I will talk about a little bit about that in a second. But let's go over this tweet just announcing the release. So it says, it's finally here. This comes via Falco Gergis on Twitter. And of course, this will also be linked like all my other stories. Anyway, Falco says, it's finally here. DOOM64 has officially landed on the Sega Dreamcast with this flawless AAA quality port by J.N. Martin. I've been following this work the entire time, beta testing, and making sure we didn't break anything in KOS, and it has been an absolute pleasure to see how much care and attention to detail has been put into bringing this N64 classic to the DC. He's released all of the source code and tools required to build and play his game on his GitHub, but there are still a few small additions I would love to see the community pitch in to help with. Already has some bitchin' VMU icons, of course the VMU, that little visual memory unit that slots into the controller. But we should definitely add support for mouse and keyboard, dual analog sticks, and rumble packs to ensure that the DC port is the definitive version. And that's going to be so cool with all of those features, isn't it? Because, of course, the Dreamcast did have an official keyboard and mouse. Official keyboard and mouse accessories back in the day. So it's kind of an authentic experience. So that's very cool. Of course, support for rumble packs and stuff. So let's. There is a video attached to this. Sorry, I should have hit play on this at the beginning, shouldn't I? But this shows the intro animation from DOOM64, which I am quite familiar with. DOOM64, and then you can see the actual gameplay here. And of course, it's nice and smooth. It doesn't say anything about what frame rate it's running at and stuff like that. But it's nice and smooth. It's very authentic. It uses all the original assets and stuff. Essentially, you need an original ROM of the game, original dump of the original cartridge, so you can actually build this and use those assets. Of course, the author J.M. Martin doesn't have permission to distribute that kind of stuff, so that makes sense to try and stay out of legal trouble. And I also noticed there were some quite interesting replies to this with some interesting information as well. So, one of the questions was, is it too dark fixed? Is the too dark fixed like the Steam PC release? And Falco replies, sure is. The developer told me horror stories of what a pain in the arse it was to fix too. Lamau. Is it using native PVR stuff or OpenGL wrapper? It's straight low-level KOS PVR API, so it's actually running on the physical hardware as well. It's not emulated running under some kind of wrapper, just like that GTA port. And the other various questions about the brightness and stuff like that. Oh, it also has native 640 by 480 support, which the Dreamcast can do over its VGA connection. So really cool. And another question, which is quite an interesting. Quite an interesting teaser for some potential future projects. Could we expect more N64 games? Already tried Mario 64 on Dreamcast and it's quite impressive. And the reply is, I think as long as the community keeps decompiling games like that, you should definitely keep expecting to see them on the Dreamcast. So this is it. Of course, there was that recent N64 decompilation project, which really opened the floodgates for all of these ports and things. Really makes developers' lives a lot easier for reverse engineering these N64 games and porting them to various other platforms. And yeah, this is kind of one of the fruits of that. So DOOM64 on the Dreamcast, running natively, going to be adding support for other stuff, and they fixed all of the weird brightness issues and stuff that plagued the original console. Very, very dark game, and not dark in a kind of creepy, atmospheric, gameplay-enhancing way. Dark in a kind of making it almost completely unplayable kind of way back in the day, and the game was quite notorious for that as well. So we'll just check out the GitHub. This is from JN Martin 84. And there's a full guide on here. Of course, it's got all the control mappings and stuff, and a guide on how to build it. There is no official ISO, whatever format the optical discs on the Dreamcast use, but there's no official release of that, unfortunately. I'm sure someone's probably built one by now and put it up on archive.org. I'll try and track one down and stick a link in the comments if I can find one, but I couldn't find one when I initially looked at this when I was making my notes. But the build instructions are relatively straightforward if you're used to building stuff. It can be built on Ubuntu, Windows 11 and Cygwin, 64-bit. It should work on most other Linux environments, and you basically just need GCC and the stuff from this GitHub repo. So yeah, very cool to see. And yeah, Grand Theft Auto 3 and DOOM64, two of the kind of coolest quite iconic games from their eras, coming natively to the Dreamcast. And to be honest, I'm just happy to see people still developing for one of my favourite consoles. So very cool to see this. I will check it out at some point on the actual physical hardware, but as I'm sure you're probably aware, I also have 1,000,001 other things going on. But yeah, that's that. Some Dreamcast games coming your way. Well, what a complete and utter fiasco. I mean, my shelf lighting just started flashing on and off, and I thought I could smell some kind of weird electrical burning smell, and thought I should probably investigate this. So I went for a rummage under the desk, and yeah, the power, that is, I can't even touch that. That's the wall wart, or the kind of power supply that was powering my shelf lighting. It's not the usual one. I must say I did have a much more heavy duty one, which I have since taken to the studio. So this was just the first sort of 12-volt PSU I could find lying around. And it's, the plastic's kind of soft to the touch. Yeah, just bear with me a second. I'll see if I can find a replacement for this, and then we'll try and continue with the show. Blimey, this is one for the history books, isn't it? Wow. Anyway, the lights are back on. I found a new power supply. It's a 1.5 amp supply rather than the 2 amp supply that was powering this before. That does not smell happy at all, but the show must go on, and hey, hopefully the new one won't melt even quicker than that one did. But yeah, anyway, speaking of technology failures, I wasn't actually sure how to kind of set up this next story, how to kind of segue into it. I like to have a little bit of a setup for each story, as you know. But it turns out that as I sit here recording this on Friday the 19th of July 2024, that fate has transpired to give me a good segue, and that is, of course, this global IT failure. And apparently that's a result of something called CrowdStrike. Now, I'm not going to be talking about that in the Ramble at all. I'm not qualified to talk about modern enterprise IT stuff, and even if I was, that would be incredibly dull, wouldn't it? But it's led to stuff like, there's planes grounded all over the world, trains aren't running, people's operations in hospitals are being cancelled, shops and supermarkets can't take payments. It's pandemonium, it's crazy, and I'm glad I'm not working in enterprise IT. I am but a lowly web developer, and the few things that I look after are all working, fingers crossed. But it does give me a nice setup for the next story, and that's what I'm getting at. And it's to do with hacks, and a rather unfortunate one that has hit the retro community in the past week, but I'm very, very pleased to say that the people involved have bounced back from it, so that's really good to see. And this is concerning Lemon Amiga and Lemon64, which are a pair of websites that, they've been around for so long now that they're kind of part of the community, and they're kind of these iconic retro gaming websites. And essentially, they are databases of games for those two platforms, for the Commodore Amiga and the Commodore 64. And, run by some really nice people. They've got a really great community around them, forums and all of that kind of stuff. And essentially, if you want to know literally anything about any game made for the Amiga or the Commodore 64 over the years, you can go to one of the respective websites. Have a little click through, you can see all the historical reviews. Some of the bigger games, you can listen to the music and look at the artwork and even see like gameplay videos and stuff. I mean, this is absolutely comprehensive stuff, and a really, really important and useful resource for the retro community. So it was quite sad when they were taken offline by a recent hack. And the sites are back up and running, and this is the official announcement from Kim Lemon, who actually runs Lemon Amiga and Lemon 64. So the official announcement on the forum basically says, as many of you may have heard, this website recently experienced a security breach. It is with a heavy heart that I share this news, but I believe it's important to be transparent with our community. Really, really well handled this, I must say. Yeah, especially considering these people are, just hobbyists. It's a passion project. So, yeah, what happened? Our website was targeted by a sophisticated attack, and the hacker was able to access and download our entire database. This breach has been a significant challenge for us, and we deeply regret any inconvenience and concern it has caused. What we've done in response to the attack, we've taken the following immediate actions to secure our community. Enhanced security measures, we've identified and patched vulnerabilities, as well as implemented additional security safeguards to protect against future attacks. Hopefully they're not using that crowd thing that's... I guess not if the website's still online. And reporting to authorities. We've also reported the incident to the authorities to ensure that appropriate actions are taken. Sadly, we've seen in the past that there's not really a lot that can be done. But, of course, worth reporting just in case. Moving forward, a few steps that they're asking users to take. So update your passwords in PHP BB3, which, of course, is their forum platform. We use an exceptionally strong and secure method of hashing, means your password cannot be decrypted. Regardless of this, we recommend that you change your password. Enable multi-factor authentication on your email accounts. And, exercise caution. Be mindful of any unusual activity or communications. And follows up with a slightly more positive message of hope. So we understand that this news is troubling and we share your concerns. However, we believe that by working together and staying vigilant, we can overcome this challenge. Our community has always been resilient and supportive, and we are confident that Lemon will emerge stronger and more united than ever. We appreciate your understanding and cooperation during this time. If you have any questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to reach out. Of course, I will link to this in the usual places, as with all of my other stories. But really, really positive follow-ups to this. The community seems to have taken it as intended. So really great to see, and yeah, it's just really sad that a hobbyist community like this would be targeted with such a thing. Of course, it's probably there haven't been any actual details released of the technical details of this hack and who's behind it and how they managed to get in. But yeah, it could just be there's all sorts of stuff out there that's constantly scanning for known vulnerabilities in software, a vulnerability in their forum software or something running on their web server. Sadly, it's all too common to see as someone who works in this industry. But I think this has been handled very well. Unfortunately, it is what it is, and thankfully, both sites have been fully restored and are back up and running with all that wonderful historical data on those games. So yeah, just kind of want to wish them all the best and. Fingers crossed, something like this doesn't happen again. Well then, I'm very pleased to announce that my package has just arrived, the parcel that I've been waiting for, and indeed, I actually very nearly missed the guy and he was walking off down the drive when I caught him, and he said I was very lucky, so glad I waited in to sign for this. So once I finish recording this ramble, I'll be able to take this over to the studio. It's a part for an upcoming project and something that I'm very much looking forward to playing with over the weekend, but anyway, the ramble must go on, and so it is time for the video of the week. The video on YouTube that I have watched this week that I have found very interesting, educational, entertaining, or insightful. You know, sometimes you get those surveys after you watch a video that's you get those multiple choice options to pick from. Yeah, that's the criteria. And this video certainly fits into at least one of those categories, if not all of them. It's from a fantastic channel, and that channel is Phil's Computer Lab. Now, Phil is a really great member of the community. He's done so much for the kind of the DOS gaming community and puts out loads of really interesting videos on sound cards and graphics cards and various DOS setups, DOS games, getting stuff running, and useful and interesting bits of hardware. I'm a religious viewer of his channel, I have to say. And this video is absolutely fantastic. So you've probably heard of terms like conventional memory and upper memory, extended memory, expanded, and all of that kind of stuff. To be honest, if you're listening to this, if you're watching this, you may even know all of this stuff inside and out. And I must confess, I don't. I was a little bit late to the DOS party. I mean, we got our first computer, our first PC in 1994, and by that point stuff was kind of moving over to Windows. And some of this early DOS memory management stuff was kind of solved by that point. Not completely, but you know what I mean. Back in the sort of the 286 and 386 days, people used to fight with all this stuff all the time, and very useful to know if you are playing with these older PCs. And also just very interesting to know from a historical perspective as well, you know, how different games worked and how they utilised RAM in different ways and how you can kind of reconfigure DOS to get those games working. And of course, Phil also has an absolutely fantastic website with loads of great DOS resources on it, all sorts of driver downloads and information on various bits of hardware and stuff that he's put together. And he also has his MS-DOS starter pack, which is a really great boot menu for DOS, which allows you to boot it up with various different RAM configurations and hardware configurations. Of course, back in the day, you know, sometimes if you wanted to play a specific game and you didn't have enough RAM, you'd have to disable your CD drive and reboot the computer to free up enough RAM to be able to play it. That's what those early DOS days were like. But this automates all of that in a nice, handy menu system. So I wanted to give a shout out to that. Of course, if you're into DOS gaming, you've probably come across this anyway. But yeah, and this video kind of goes into a lot of detail as to how that actually works and what that does. So he talks about the historical context of why this works the way that it does, and of course how things kind of grew from that original IBM PC with its conventional memory, 640K, and then into kind of the 286 and the 386 era, and how people kind of expanded that memory. And it's just fascinating, you know, if you're interested in the history of how and why it works the way that it does and why these terms are what they are, I think you'll find this video very interesting. I mean, it's 19 minutes and it's a very practical video as well with some very good hands-on examples, as you would expect from Phil's Computer Lab. So that's my video of the week. Unfortunately, no kazoo to announce it this week because I'm not at the studio. But yeah, DOS Memory Explained by Phil's Computer Lab. Link is down below, and 19 minutes, go give it a watch. Very interesting stuff. And so my final story for this week is all about me and about a video that I've released on my main channel, which of course I touched on last week, but that video hadn't actually been made public yet. Now it has. It's been out for a whole week as of pretty much now, and it's done really, really well, and it's really good to see. But yeah, it's good that people have found it interesting, because I found it very interesting just playing with this thing and putting the video together and kind of showing people that perhaps they might have thought wasn't possible or hadn't even considered before. I'm not really sure, but it has struck a chord with people. This, of course, is the Windows 11 on Pentium 4 or Windows 11 on 20-year-old hardware video that went out last Friday, and it's just about to hit 20,000 views. So it's got 19.8 thousand. It's currently averaging around, I think it's around 100 views per hour, something like that. So it has dropped off over the past day or so, but that's really good for my channel. Very pleased with that. I think the last video I had that did that kind of those kind of numbers was the follow-up desk PC video. Not the first one where I ran Doom on it, but the second one where I kind of stripped it down and did some work on it. Kind of very similar format to this one as well, so perhaps that's my viewers telling me something. But yeah, 19.8 thousand views. I've gained 203 new subscribers off the back of it, so great to see all those new people on board. Of course, people were looking forward to a follow-up, I guess, and there will be one. I've been tinkering with this PC a little bit more, and I can take it a little bit further and do some more quite interesting stuff with it, just to make it a little bit more useful. So I think that'll be quite an interesting one to kind of put out there for people. And it's earned me £52.53 in ad revenue, which just about covers the cost of the PC. So much like the desk PC, hey, at least it's paid for itself. I mean, as long as you work on the assumption that my time is completely and utterly worthless. But of course, this is a hobby for me. I'm tinkering with all of this stuff anyway. Pointing a camera at it and making a video about it just kind of adds to the experience for me. And that's why I do this. And I'm still having a great time and still loving putting all of these videos together for people. And the cool thing in YouTube Studio, where we get to see these stats, is when a video does unusually well, we also get some pointers from YouTube to try and help us, help us to repeat this success in future. So, I've got more views from YouTube recommendations. I've got a higher click-through rate on my thumbnail. I've got a longer average view duration. And if you actually sit and read this advice, what it usually says to you is, your video's got more views because more people have watched it. And you've got a higher click-through rate because more people have clicked on it. And you've got a longer average view duration because people have watched it for longer than they usually would on your other video. Average view duration really really bothers me, to be honest, the way that it works. Because this video is over half an hour long, which is unusually long for my channel. And of course it's going to have a longer average view duration than a 15-minute video because there's twice as much of it, and YouTube doesn't seem to calculate this as a percentage. It does it as in an actual time span. But that's a rant for another time. Anyway, that's by the by. But yeah, that's that video. That is doing great. And if you would like to see a complete and utter fool trying to run, or indeed successfully running, Windows 11 on a 20-year-old Pentium 4 system, that will be linked in the usual places, as well everything else that I've covered in this week's Ramble. But I'm boiling alive here in my little spare room. My package is here, so I'm going to take that over to the studio, going to have some lunch, and yeah, get this thing uploaded. So thank you ever so much for joining me once more this week. Hopefully normal service shall resume next week. And I'll also eagerly await the call to let me know that my car's ready to pick up. Quite how I'm going to get over there to pick it up, because it's about half an hour's drive away. I haven't worked out yet, but hey, maybe there'll be an Uber driver in my vicinity at the time. Who knows? That's a problem for future me. Thank you ever so much once more for joining me, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Lovely sunny weekend here in the UK. That's it. Bye.